got going on here. So in order to take out this radiator, I've got to get this fan shroud out. Fan's got to come off. Got 3 of the nuts out of there, and then wrench slipped on that one. Decided to put a pair of vice grips on it and completely round it off. So now I got to come up with plan F for failure to get that thing out of there. Alright, so got most of these out. This top section opened up. Top just popped off of that one, so open, but just having this joint gives us enough clearance that we can pop the bottom open. Well, I doubt you can see this, but there's another seam. Right. Well, where'd you go? Oh, well, turns out that's not a seam, it's just a crack. I was hoping you could split it right here too, but it doesn't look that way. It looks like that's just cracked. So apparently there's a tornado coming through out here, blowing everything around. Alright, so if you can't tell, it's the next day. Just a quick little recap of what we had going on here yesterday. The wind was getting real bad. It was blowing the hood shut on me, and I was getting rained on a little bit and getting real frustrated with those rounded off nuts, trying to get the fan clutch off here. So I'm gonna stop this real quick, turn the camera around, show y'all what we did. So yesterday I was able to get 3 of the 4 nuts off of the fan clutch, but this one right here had rounded off real bad. And one of the things I've learned working on old stuff over the years, this thing's in my driveway right now. I don't need to get anywhere in it right away. It's not an emergency. So if I run into something that's frustrating and just driving me nuts, sometimes it's better to put it down and think about it for a while. You know, relax, spend some time with the family, do something else, come back to it with a clear head, and just get a fresh start. So thought about it yesterday evening and came up with this plan. I've got a set of channel locks here with rubber on the handles, and so what I'm doing is I've got one of the handles wedged in between the threads of this stud here and the neck of the actual fan itself. So I'm able to push down on that and keep this whole thing from turning. And then I got this gnarly old pair of vice grips that clamps down a lot better. You get a lot more clamping surface with these than you do with these skinny little things. And also, this is a needle nose design. It's really not made for getting these bigger nuts off. Well, I can't really show you with one hand, but there's so much length here that this has a lot of play in it, back and forth. Like you can feel when you wiggle this back and forth, you can move this lower jaw around independent from the upper jaw. Now it's not as bad when you have it clamped down on something, but it's still it's not as good of a design as these for really clamping down on that nut and being able to get it to move. So I broke it free. Moral of the story. I came out here with this plan in mind, and it came right off on the first try when I was out here fighting with it in the wind and rain for a good 20 minutes yesterday with the wrong tools. So like I said, sometimes it pays to step back and just start with a clear head. So I'm gonna keep rolling. I also watched a video on this yesterday. I forget the name of the channel. I'll put a link for it in the description. But the guy does a real good job of showing you all the steps involved. He's got the factory service manual, and you can tell his wrenched on a lot more to you than I have. So he kind of walks through every step of the process, and I watched that last night and got more of an idea of what we're looking at here. Both of these belts actually need to come off completely because this whole housing comes off with the fan clutch, which I didn't know. That would have been a nasty surprise. This battery tray needs to come out because, well, this battery box needs to come out because the fan shroud actually goes behind it there. I was thinking, looking at this yesterday, there's a lot of damage to mine, so there's obviously been some stuff going on in here before, but you know, this thing's a 93. It's 29 years old at this point, so that's nothing to worry too much about. It's not out of the ordinary for a fan shroud to have a few dings on it. Anyway, I may try and see if I can wiggle this thing out of there with the battery box still in place, but if it's fighting me at all, I'm just going to go ahead and stop and pull that thing out. It wouldn't hurt to disconnect this battery anyway, because it's probably going to be a little while before I get this wrapped up, and I don't want to leave the battery sitting here draining on it for another week. It's Sunday afternoon. If I don't button this thing up today, it's gonna sit here in the driveway till at least next Saturday when I can finish it up. And I'm also missing a nut on my brake master cylinder. That's real nice. You know, sometimes you just notice little stuff like that. And then we got some mud daubers in there. Look at that. So, mostly I just want to get this wrapped up so I can pull this thing out. And there's a nice little state park about 45 minutes away that I go to ride bikes a lot. So I'd like to be able to drive this out there next weekend, give it a little shakedown, see what else we got going on, and make sure that this radiator holds when I replace it. I always like to do a short, kind of local drive before I do anything too long after I work on it. So yeah, I want to get that done so I can get out there next weekend and kind of do a good walk around video of this thing and let y'all see it. I know I've gotten some good shots of it just when I'm working on it in the driveway, but I don't want to put too much of my neighborhood and my neighbors and everything in these videos for privacy reasons. I'd like to get it out in the light where you can get a real objective idea of what kind of shape it's in. One of my main goals here with these videos is to encourage people that might be curious about owning an old rig like this. Don't be scared of it. You know, this thing's got a lot of red flags that would a collector wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole, but if you just want to have an 80 series Land Cruiser to get out and cruise around with, have some fun, get out in the woods and camp, this thing does great. And I'm far from a professional mechanic, and there's nothing that's going wrong on this thing that I can't handle. So if I can do it, you can do it too. Don't be scared. Get out there. Buy one. Anyway, I'm gonna get back to this, and I'd like to at least get this old unit out today. So next weekend all I'll have to do is worry about fitting the new one in, buttoning everything up, and filling her up and running her. So, see you soon. So as I suspected, the fan does come off independent of this housing, but the fan is the only thing holding tension on here. So when these belts are tight, this thing's flopping all around. If I try to reinstall that with the belts tight, it's just gonna booger up all these threads, so I'm not gonna do that. Hindsight being 2020, should have taken them off beforehand because it's probably boogering up these threads already, but it is what it is. I got excited and said, oh, that thing's coming out, so out it came. Now that I can get to this, lower radiator hose, oil cooler hose, there's another oil cooler line, a couple of them on this side. I think that's actually AC related, but this one needs to come off. Don't think that is anything that we need to worry about. I think that'll tuck off out of the way. The drain for the radiator is actually, I don't know if you can see it, but it's wedged way down in here. So if this thing hadn't have already leaked all the fluid out by the time I started this, I would have been really scratching my head about how to get to that. Before I reinstall this, I might see if I can adapt something else on the new one to get us a little more access to that, because there is no way I'm reaching this big old hand all the way up in there from the bottom with the fan and the fan shroud installed. That's just not happening. There's also a steering stabilizer down there in the way, so that's just a bad Toyota. What were you thinking with that one? I don't know. Also, speaking of bad Toyota, this will be the second time I've had to do this. This bolt right here, if this will focus, is the tensioner for the, well, it's like a lock nut basically on the tensioner rod for these belts. So in order to tension these belts, you first have to get to this and loosen that, and then you can come around here on the other side of the dispenser. Where is it? Well, I doubt you're even going to be able to see this, but I'll try and point it out to you. There she is, way down in here. Well, it's not going to focus with my finger in there, but if I move, I might be able to get it. Let's see. Well, it wouldn't focus, but that is the tensioner down there. But what I actually just saw, apparently when this thing flopped over, it took the tension off of these belts. So that's the idler pulley right there, and as you can see, it's just spinning freely. There's a ton of slack in these, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave that where it is for now, and we'll worry about loosening her up afterwards. But anyway, funny story about these belts. This thing, I don't know if I've mentioned this or not, but I flew to New Jersey from Louisiana to buy this rig. That's why there's all the rust and corrosion on it that you don't normally see in a southern rig. But these two belts, when I did my pre-purchase inspection, if you will, I already knew I was going to buy it. I had put insurance on it and everything. I mean, there would have had to, the transmission would have been having to be hanging out the bottom of this thing for me to not get it. So but when I was looking it over, I was trying to see if anything stuck out that wouldn't make a 1,300 mile trip back home, and these belts were super dry rotted and cracking, and the guy I bought it from actually had the new belts sitting in the back of the rig, and he had this thing in his shop, and I halfway thought about asking the guy, hey, you mind if we just pop these belts on real fast before I get on the road, but he had kind of taken enough time out of his weekend and was trying to watch some sports games and stuff, so I felt bad asking him. My plan was just to try and get to O'Reilly's or an AutoZone or anywhere that I could buy a cheap tool set and just swap them in the parking lot. Well, those two belts, I got carried away when I got on the road and just hit the New Jersey Turnpike because I was all excited, and those belts went kaboom! About 45 minutes into the drive, left me on the side of the road in a snowstorm with no tools, a bunch of ice. Pretty much the most miserable I've ever been in an automotive breakdown, but it just goes to show you, you know, I mean, even if the worst thing happens, I caught a tow to a hotel parking lot, walked to a Walmart right down the street the next morning, grabbed a tool set, threw these belts on, was back on the road the next day. Anyway, I think I have some pictures of all that. I'll splice them in here, but alright, well, let's get back to it. Alright, so hoses are off, hoses off over here, hoses off up here. Well, I found a couple more things I need to take care of. The upper support bolt is right here at the top, and on this side it is a zip tie. I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's no bolt like this. There is a zip tie down in there. So that's not great, but it is what it is. It's been holding for this long. What else? There's also the other side of that is right here, I believe. Well, hold on. Let's look at this one. No, it's up here. Alright, for some reason, the video I watched, the guy was taking the grill off. And I'm not 100% sure why. Because the oil cooler's on the front here, all those lines go around. I don't think that interferes with it, unless this bolt right here is securing it somehow, but it doesn't look like it is. Anyway, I'm gonna try and leave this grill on. Battery box definitely needs to come out, because man, I sure wish this thing would focus where I wanted it to, but it will not. I'll show you on this side because I can get down in there. The lower radiator tie down is right there, which if we come over here on this side, there's no way that we're getting to that. Alright, so update. We did have to take the grill off. I'm trying to think where I was last time. I ended up just busting a bunch of stuff out here instead of worrying about filming because I'm getting low on daylight. I took the battery out because I didn't think there was any way this thing was coming out without taking this box out, but turns out that I snuck a small 1/4 inch ratchet down there and pulled that bolt out. You did have to take the grill out because these guys come all the way through. I don't know if you can see that back there. Let's see. Right here. They go all the way through, so there was no way. That was just spinning when I tried to turn a wrench on this side. So I popped off the grill just for this one bolt, really, but the grill's only 5 screws, so it's not the end of the world. I think this thing's about ready to come out, so I'm going to film it. Here we go. What are we catching on? Bracket. On that side. Oh man, it is tight in here. So you can see this whole area looks like it's been leaking for quite some time. We got a lot of bugs here, a bunch of road funk. Let's look at the back, because ooh, leaking there. This is where I think the leak actually was, on this side. There's no telling. I mean, I don't see any obvious cracks here, but any number of these fins can be damaged. But you can see by the rust here, this thing's been leaking for a while, so time for it to go. It's had a good life. Alright, so here she is. We got her out. Now, if I was in a hurry here and I was doing this in an emergency repair situation, I would go ahead and throw the new radiator right back in here, because none of these hoses look too bad. But I did order a water pump for this thing. I ordered a thermostat for it. So what I'm going to try and do is, after work during the week, get in here and kind of chip away on that a little bit at a time. I may or may not film that, but I'll film some updates throughout the process. If I don't film the actual removal, there's plenty of videos on how to do that stuff already. But mostly what I wanted to look at was in here, because like I said, this thing's from New Jersey. There's a lot of rust on this rig. It's been undercoated a bunch of times, so it's hard to get like an accurate idea of what the frame rails really look like, because there's so much spray on here. But in the engine compartment behind this radiator, you can kind of get a sense of what the metal on this frame actually looks like, because sitting underneath this radiator, an undercoating is not going to get up in a lot of these spots. So, you know, definitely some surface rust. Some of these welds are rusting a little bit, but it's pretty encouraging, because overall it's not anywhere near as bad as I expected. Tomorrow I'm going to try and stick a light in some of these holes, maybe see if I can borrow a scope from somebody and look down in the channels, see what the frame actually looks like. And I know this is not a high rust area of the bot of the frame. There's not going to be a lot of road salt right up here at the front, but you know, just 30 years of exposure to any kind of salt in general makes you worry about stuff like that. So while I'm in there, I'm going to try and clean some of that up. Probably paint over some of this. I know you guys hate that. Oh, don't paint over rust. But if you don't put some kind of rust converter or some kind of coating on it, it's just going to continue to rust and eat away. If you treat it, might buy you another few years on this rig. Especially if somebody, you know, if I keep treating it, stay on top of it, it'll keep this rust from progressing any further. And you know, if I ever do plan on selling this thing, I'll have full documentation of what it looked like before and during the stages. So that's my plan. My wife and kids are home now. It's Sunday afternoon, so I'm gonna go spend some time with them, hang out with the family a little bit. checking the fit on this thing. New radiator, old radiator. This line's a little different, but it's also super loose, so when you tighten it down, it's got markings. It looks like this is probably supposed to be torqued here, and it wasn't, so it's fun. So it might just be stuff cleaning out of that. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and break it off. But first, this is not a paid sponsorship or anything, but I found this stuff works pretty well to loosen up old rusty stuff like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just douse these down. You want to make sure you do this right over your grass, you know, because it's real good for that, and your wife will love it. Alright, so we're going to let that sit and soak for a while. Alright, so I got these taken off of the old radiator, and they really don't look as bad as I thought when I first pulled them out. I mean, yeah, they're rough, but there's plenty of other stuff that's rough on here, and they're super solid. So for now, this is what we're rolling with in the interest of saving some time and hopefully getting this thing stabbed back in here today. I've got the one bolt that I have available for the upper radiator still hanging out in here. I think I'm going to leave that there while I install it. The bottom has to line up there and over here. Hopefully I can get it back in without pulling this battery tray out, because I'm not looking forward to doing that. I do want to get these leads out. Alright, so ready to throw it back in. Let's see how this goes. Well, I went in there pretty easily. That hole's lining right up, of course, because that's the one that I can see. This hole, not so much. That thing's not wanting to thread, so I actually can't see it from up here, but if I get the camera down in there, I'm gonna see if I can tell which way this needs to go. See some daylight, so I know it's close. There we go. Perfect. See if this guy goes down in there now. Y'all can just hang out and look at the engine for a second while I drop this in. Oh yeah, there it goes. No, not yet. Maybe. Maybe. Strong maybe. Oh, she's threading. Perfect. Alright, let's see about this one. How far up? Oh. Well. Now this one's way off. I'm gonna wiggle a screwdriver down in there and see if I can straighten this bearing out, bushing out a little bit. Rule number one, keep your tools organized. That's what I need, and it was right on the top. That's organization for you. So I'm just pushing a small Phillips head down through there. That'll let you get in the hole and kind of pull it straight. You don't want to go nuts on it because you'll gum the threads all up, but if you're gentle, come on, you're right there. Not quite. Maybe a little rougher with it, I guess. Oh, it's so close. I'll set this down for a minute. Update. So, I ran this bolt all the way in, thinking that I had one on this end started. Turns out I did not. So I went to tighten this one, and it's not going down in the hole. It's just spinning in there. So I decided I'd pull this battery box out, disconnected some stuff here to pull that contact through the hole, got all the bolts out, and then discovered that behind my professionally installed HID ballast here, there is a whole nest of wires, but there is also a line from this, I think this is the AC dryer, not 100% sure. Anyway, one of those lines goes down through this tray, so the fun continues. So I'm probably going to fight with this bolt a little bit more, see if I can get it to run in that thread without taking this out, now that I've fought all the rusty bolts out of it for nothing. Probably get frustrated with that and end up cutting some kind of hole through this tray so I don't have to disconnect my AC lines to remove it. Bad Toyota. What were you thinking? Alright, so lesson learned. Pulled this one all the way out so I could move this radiator around. Got this one lined up. Now I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up a good bit to the point where I'm 100% sure that it's in the threads, because it's going to take me a lot of fighting and maneuvering to try and get that battery tray out with the AC line in the way. Definitely not unhooking my AC lines, because one, I don't feel like it. Two, I don't know what kind of Freon's in this thing, but this has the best air conditioner out of any vehicle I've ever owned. I mean, it gets hot in August in Louisiana, and you turn this thing on, and 5 minutes later, you're sitting in a refrigerator, you can hang meat in there. So, I don't want to screw it up. And I know if I let a bunch of Freon out, chances are I may never get it right again, as old as this thing is. I don't want to risk any of that more than I have to. It feels like this thing's really tightening up this time. I'm 99% sure I got it. I'm about to go underneath, because you can see the end of the thread coming out the bottom of the blind nut in there. I think that's what that's called, I don't know. Again, not a professional mechanic. If you know the right term for that, comment it down there and let me know. Educate me a little bit. That way we can all learn something together here. Let me go take a look. Want to come with me? All right, so where are we at? Goodness, it's getting dark quick. Ah, there you are. Let me see if I can focus this thing. Sort of. I don't know if you can see that, but right up there, there's some threads peeking through. So now we're getting somewhere. Alright, so now we got to figure some things out because I've got this bolt back in. And if you remember from earlier, this one just had a zip tie holding it. So I don't want to leave this brand new radiator just banging around like this. So I need to either find another upper radiator mounting bolt with the associated bushing, or option B, I need to come up with a spacer that can fit in here. So I'm gonna go dig around the garage and see what I can find. This thing just popped right back into place like magic almost. Alright, back in a minute. Well, I got her back together and filled it with coolant, and my suspicions are confirmed. We either have a stuck thermostat or a bad water pump. I think it's a stuck thermostat. It's not too bad right now, but I'm just in my neighborhood on my street. I took it out around the block, and as soon as I got out on the road and started giving it a little throttle, the temperature shot all the way up to right underneath the red. This is where it normally sits cruising, but it was creeping way up to the red as soon as I started giving it throttle, and that was the same thing it did last time I drove it. And when I got back, I found the coolant leak and an empty radiator. So now we got the radiator situation fixed. I just got to swap out that water pump and thermostat. The encouraging part here, oh yeah, also no fan shroud. I'll show you why in a second. But there's no leaks. No puddles under here, no fresh puddles anyway. That's where my oil's been leaking for quite some time. We'll tear that down and address that soon. But yeah, radiator's holding. But yeah, the top of the tank's pretty hot. So water is circulating in there, but it's not from the water pump. It's just from the temperature of the engine, so that's not ideal. This is the fan shroud situation. I discovered this when I was going to reinstall it. So this rig does have a salvage title. It was totaled, and I never bothered to look up the Carfax, but what I'm finding in places like this where things don't line up perfectly, I think it was some kind of front end damage, and you know, obviously this quarter here is compromised. So I think this thing got hit in the front and things don't exactly line up the way they're supposed to. So that fan shroud has been rubbing on the fan, and I noticed a little ticking noise sometimes. I wasn't entirely sure where it was coming from, but there we have the culprit. So I got to see if I can do some alterations to this fan shroud, maybe just find another OEM replacement, figure something else out. But for now, it's winter. I'm not doing a whole lot of stop and go traffic driving with this thing, so it should be fine to run it for a little while without it until I get the rest of this cooling system sorted out. This is the thermostat that I ordered, and it does not exactly match the one that came out, and it didn't come with a gasket. And I looked up, this is the old one, well, this is the old O-ring. The gasket that was in there was just a bunch of RTV, so whoever did this job before just kind of slapped some Ertiv in there. That's the old one. I put it back in there just to get an idea of how it would fit compared to this one. So I wasn't really comfortable with the way that one was going in. I actually installed it, cranked it up, and as I suspected, it was just pouring water out the bottom. But the old one is definitely stuck. So I know that that's the issue that I was having with overheating once I got out on the road. We're kind of at a pause. But new radiator's in, new radiator's not leaking so far. I'm curious to see if it holds up with the thermostat opened up, but I'm pretty confident in it. So yeah, as soon as some parts come in, we'll get back at it.